Welcome to Braithwaite TV. Things have just got to change.
Well, I have to say, as a neighbor, Dr. Braithwaite, he totally lit up the neighborhood. My early memory of him walking down the street from here to my father's house in 1A, James Brown look, bell bottoms, wedge shoes, and we're stunned. How can a man so great in age from our perspective be so light in style? And we're drawn to his unconventionality. This house became the hub for teenage parties. He was very accommodating. He patrolled the parties as if he was one of us, but we saw the parental restraint. We were all at peace, and we found a dad who understood the passions of youth. But the most important element for me was when I came home as a lawyer. I came to visit him, and he threw a file at me and said, "This is your first case." I was daunted. He said, "Son, go ahead." And by the combination of the wisdom of age and the audacity of youth, we're able to weave a case where we were able to succeed on behalf of his client. But the greater moment, when I thought that drama had ended, was when I was called as a senior advocate of Nigeria. I was walking to the Court of Appeal, my first appearance, with all the anxiety of a young senior advocate, not sure how I was going to react. And as I sat down, trying to compose myself, the judges sat, and I flickered my eyes to the right, and I saw Tunji sitting on the right. At that instant moment, I knew that it defined that moment. So I stood up and I told the court, having regard to the presence of Tunji Braithwaite, I cannot mention my case. I defer to him mentioning his case. The court asked me, "Are you sure you are waiving your right?" I said, "Of course I'm sure I'm waiving my right." Tunji stood up, we bowed to each other, he nodded, he made some very nice comments, but the importance of it really was the subordination of rank and title to the superiority of culture and values. And those were very memorable moments in the legal profession. And I think it stood as an example within the confines of the court on that day. Of course, Tunji could have been a senior advocate many, many years before. He chose because he was not interested in the elitism and the privilege it created. But he loved the profession. It was like a first love. He loved the costume. He loved the grandeur. He loved the fact that gladiators were fighting for the purpose of justice with the world as an audience. He loved the stage. But he had one restriction. He said, this first love has a problem. If the laws which make us practice this law are not good, then we need to create another platform by which we can amend those laws. And that is what drew him into politics. And I'll never forget, in 1978, watching that impassioned declaration when he announced his candidacy as president of National Advance Party. As a young person, you were impressed by the clarity of his vision, the intensity of his apprehension, his reference to cockroaches and rats, which, if you weren't thinking deeply, you wouldn't have understood. But he was talking about the parasitic nature of corruption in Nigeria. He was also talking about health. Bill Gates has dedicated his whole life and his whole fortune to eradicating health in Africa. So you can imagine the sort of thoughts and prefiguring that Dr. Tunji Braithwaite had. He formed the party, and then he saw a greater platform than being a lawyer. And in this regard, he metamorphosed. He became a great source of moral authority. Even though the party did not acquire power, but you could not ignore the moral force which he represented in Nigerian politics. And in this phase, he was not alone. He had a bit of the fervor and the passion of Gandhi in him. He had the articulation and intellectual rigor of Wole Soyinka. He had Fela's stubbornness. He had the doggedness of Sholari. He had the forcefulness of Alawa Akobashonru. He had all these elements composed in one man. He was actually quite remarkable because he compartmentalized his life. He was a man who made money, but he made no apologies for it. He saw wealth as an instrument to create opportunity. He was a dandy. He loved to look good. Look at the sunglasses he wears in that picture. You can imagine the sense of fashion. But he was also at ease in the drudgery of a prison, sleeping overnight, as he is when he's on the splendor of the seas, cruising on holiday. He saw life must be lived in every department. And to this extent, he was a man who lived a very complete life. Auntie, he was inseparable from you. I watched it. I've never seen a better practicalization of the institution, of the notion of oneness in marriage than Uncle and Auntie, because you hardly saw them separately. Throughout my experience with him, he loved his children, were always here, tending to parties. And he had a great passion for life. His religion and his faith was the creed of his politics, and he was no hypocrite. He practiced it, and he abided by it. Towards the end, he became an elder statesman. This house was a crucible for organized resistance. He became the symbol of progressive politics in Nigeria. And I must tell you something. If you look at history, people tend not to be acknowledged till after they've gone. Usually it's when the age has passed and historians look back with the benefit of hindsight. But some people force their time and their age to acknowledge them. And that is one person was Uncle Tunji Braithwaite. He ensured within his own time, he was recognized, he was no spectator of action, he was a hero of his own history. And it became symbolic. He wanted to test the moral temperature of this country. Just come and use a thermometer and test Uncle Tunji Braithwaite, and you had the feeling. It gives me great pleasure to be here again today on another event like this with great memories, great times, and may his soul rest in peace. Thank you very much.